Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy Caryn Johnson, the Earth Channel, here with you with another message today about moon cycles and healing our relationship with them, otherwise known as lunar cycles. And first, I'll start out with a poem. Going to try a little different order today. Then we will go to a message from Gaia, Mother Earth, channeled through me. And then we will have a little bit of a conversation about how I may have applied whatever Gaia chooses to talk about in my own life and how you might also be able to. The nice thing about moon cycles is that they are the same whether you live in the northern or the southern hemisphere. And by healing our relationship with them, we can begin to heal our relationship with the feminine and even divine feminine cycles, which I do not think are completely healed yet in today's society. So, with no further ado, here's the poem about moon cycles. Round and round the cycles go, where they end no one knows. From a seed a flower grows, and then it wilts beneath the snows. Sleep and dream of brighter days. Plant new seeds in the dark, rich clay. Watch them sprout and reach for the sun's rays. Learn from how they flourish or stray. Gather what fruits that you may. Honor the process and contrasts displayed. And now the message from Gaia. So if you'd like to join me, you may take a few deep breaths and close your eyes as I do, if you'd like. Hello, this is Gaia. We have spoken before using the word we as our pronoun rather than I. And we have spoken before about our collective nature, but the latter has been a while. One of the beings in our collective is the moon, Luna. And that is why we have asked Amy to focus upon the lunar cycles for today's message. As this video is being made, the moon is in the waning gibbous phase. That is the phase that comes right after the full moon. The full moon can mean many things, as you may already know, or you may associate it with one specific thing in particular. You may have noticed how crazy things tend to happen around the full moon. Sometimes they can seem crazy for the better, and sometimes they can seem crazy for the worse. In a woman's cycle, the full moon represents ovulation, the potential for fertilization, for creativity, for conception of something new, but also of receiving the fruits of your labors. There are many different ways to look at these cycles and the various points within them. But this one does parallel, a full moon parallels with the summer solstice. And as you transition from waning gibbous moon to the waning crescent moon, that transition point is similar to the autumnal equinox, or fall equinox as you may know it. But as Amy mentioned at the beginning of this video, the moon cycles are the same all over the earth, whereas the solar cycles are different based on whether you are in the northern or the southern hemisphere. Nevertheless, the autumnal equinox, wherever you may be, you can see the parallel there of receiving or harvesting the fruits of your labor. Sometimes you may have a wonderful harvest. Other times you may come to a place of truly being able to observe mistakes that may have been made, or simply the effects of uncontrollable events upon your crops. We want you to recognize the difference between those things. There are events outside of your control, and there are different ways to respond to those things. Some responses bring one type of outcome, other responses bring another type of outcome. But regardless of your response, the effect of the uncontrollable event may occur. To greater or lesser effect. So what is important to observe at these times, when perhaps your harvest isn't everything you hoped it would be, is that you recognize how you feel. Because that is where the true fruits of your labor lie. Oftentimes in today's world, people do not want to talk about or even really observe women's cycles and the cycle that would parallel with the transition point between the waning gibbous and waning crescent moon, or the autumnal equinox, would be that point where you begin the last week before the cycle of bleeding, your mens. The part that is often seen as the only part of the cycle. But there are parts the whole month long that have various gifts that they bring with them. And so during the week leading up to the dark moon, leading up to that first day of the cycle, but of course, since we are not there yet, it is the end of the cycle, is in a way like a collective week of premenstrual syndrome. And we know that there are many judgments about that in today's society, today's culture. But it is a time to recognize your emotions, your feelings. And when you have had the opportunity to observe the fruits of your labor and perhaps observe things that you would like to improve upon in some way or another, the feelings that might come up at first when you first start looking at them may be fear, maybe irritation, disappointment, and even shame or guilt. We assure you that that first step of recognizing what you're feeling is beneficial. Once you identify the emotion, it already begins to stop having power over you. Just by being able to name it, even if it's not a precise description. Maybe it's a combination of two or more of those emotions that we named. And then recognize how much control you truly had over that outcome and did not have. And if there was no way for you to know any better, then we invite you to consider the possibility that you had even less control than you thought you did. Of course, you can learn from it, regardless. But please do not beat yourselves up for things beyond your control, beyond your knowledge, beyond your awareness. It's also a good time to listen for others' stories, to share your stories of things that disappointed you or scared you. This begins to speak to the purpose of the Day of the Dead coming up next week. However, we will focus more upon that next week. But there is value in sharing stories of how things culminated in your lives with each other, so that you can not only learn from the experiences you go through yourself, but also those experiences that others go through. And that is the primary reason to release your shame and allow yourself to be a little bit vulnerable. We're not telling you to shout your story from the rooftops, but begin to take baby steps toward finding at least one other person you can trust to share your story and to share their story with you and your feelings with each other. We thank you so much for joining us, beloveds, and we ask that you stay with us and with Amy, actually, for a couple more minutes so that she can share the ways that she has implemented the lessons of these cycles into her life. Namaste. Hello. Not much more to add. I have been following my own cycles as a woman for a few years now, but I have also noticed how the collective behaves during these different cycles of the moon, not relative to my own cycle, but just the moon. And I know that as a society, we do tend to want to turn away from, ignore, and shun in a lot of ways the PMS cycle, part of the cycle that women go through, especially because emotions can be so prevalent during that time. It is a good time for editing of any kind that you may need to do. Going back, it's almost like a retrograde in a way, which we just finished a Mercury retrograde, which is similar. It's nice. It's a good time to go back, review things, and to find errors or things that you want to not necessarily correct, but improve. And we can all use that once in a while, right? So one other thing that Gaia had been really mentioning to me earlier today and did not come up during the brief message that she shared with us is to identify which chakra in your body you are feeling fear or whatever that emotion might be. And you may even want to ask yourself how old you are when you are feeling that feeling. When is the first time you felt it, perhaps? And that may take you back to the time when, excuse me, perhaps you received some kind of wound or have some kind of scar around that emotion or in that chakra. By identifying that, breathing into it, and basically just holding it as if you are becoming your own parent. You are becoming the healer of your own wound. You can do this. You don't necessarily need someone else to heal you. You are your own best healer. And so that is what I would like to invite you to do today. And if you would like to take that next step in sharing your story, sharing your emotions that might be coming up around this time of year or this cycle of the moon, I would invite you to leave a comment below. And if you aren't feeling quite brave enough to do that, feel free to message me directly as well. And I'd love to share more with you about cycles or any other topic that you might be interested in. And I believe personally that astrology affects every aspect of our lives. So with that, thank you so much for joining me. Namaste, beloveds.